Learn something new and connect with like-minded contributors in health, wealth and relationships. This is Power Lunch with
Pabi Moloi
on Power 98.7.
Indeed. So we're into our Tuesday segment today, and it is our favorite, well, my favorite segment, because we get to go into how we think, who we are. Who do you think you are? And how we operate as a result of that. It's the Psychology of segment here on Power Lunch on Power 98.7. Let's talk about how in many households, specifically when resources are stretched very, very thin, the eldest child often steps into the role of a deputy parent. So they take on responsibilities that are usually reserved for adults. So they'll care for younger siblings, they'll help to manage household chores, perhaps even mediating family dynamics, being the one who wakes up in the morning to bath all the children and make sure everybody goes to school. You know, those things that parents should handle. But if you have, quite a number of kids, I don't know if it's that abnormal for some of the older kids to look after some of the younger kids. But when, for example, a teenage girl finds herself preparing meals, attending school meetings for her siblings, sacrificing her own social or academic pursuits to keep the family functions, that's really wrong. It's really unfair on her. So we're going to explore the psychology behind deputy parenting and how it impacts a child's identity and development, the emotional health that child has, future relationship, the impact of their attachment styles. That's a very big one. And their sense of self-worth. And, I always go from the one extreme to the other. We can talk about being, the firstborn child and everything that comes with that. But we can also talk about child-headed households, which we see so much as a devastating consequence of much of the social ills in South Africa. So let's welcome Karabo Mokoena, who is a mental health and conscious parenting advocate, to give us some detail and to guide this conversation as you join us as well on all of the different ways you know how to do. 0861987000. That's the studio line. 0833037093. That is how you can WhatsApp and voice note us, and at Pabi Moloi and at Power FM 987 with the hashtag Power Lunch on X. Karabo, it's lovely to talk to you again. Welcome to Power Lunch.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Pabi, for having me, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So let's start, a little bit more light. In your family dynamic, are you the first, second, third? Where are you on the dynamic?
This one is so tricky because now I'm the girl that made my big sister a deputy parent. My sister was.
You sound very guilty.
Yes, when my sister was 11 when I was born, so she kind of assumed that role because my father was not present, and my mother was also not kind of emotionally available. So my sister was taking me to the clinic, Pabi, for my immunization when I was a newborn. She kind of assumed that responsibility, which was a huge one, which was not meant to be hers.
Yes.
So, this conversation is quite a personal one for me, but I think an important one as well, because those dynamics still exist today,
Between you and her?
No, I'm saying just in general society.
But tell me quickly, what was the age gap between the two of you?
11.
Oh, 11 years.
11 years older than me. Yeah. And it's tricky, man, because then for a long time, she was my other mom,
Yeah.
And it affected our relationship. It's only when I became an adult, then we became sisters. We were able to relate with each other on that level. But for quite some time, I struggled to see her as that because she had assumed the role of a deputy parent. So she became a parent more than a sister.
Oh, there's so many difficult dynamics around that. I can imagine from the younger child's point of view, and I mean, I'm sure you've thought about it from her point of view as well. What is the danger in that? I mean, I've got a 17-year age gap between myself and my next sibling, right? So I'm not even deputy parent. I'm just the cool aunt who, you know, can get you to do cool things with me, right? I'm that much older.
Yeah.
And when I was in first year varsity, everyone thought that was my child. And my mom was just secretly pretending it was her child so that they could protect my public image. So there's that much of a gap, you know what I mean? But
That's huge, yeah.
So from her point of view, I'm sure you've thought about it and even engaged with her about some of the impact that responsibility and role, the parentification, had on her.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, when deputy parents become adults, they learn that you know, and they believe that love needs to be earned through sacrifice. You know, as adults, they may even struggle with intimacy because the dynamics of relationships are just not really clear for them. They find it really difficult to ask for help. They get accustomed to kind of getting burned out because they always have to be the reliable one, even when they don't really feel like they're very reliable.
Yes.
You know, they can't come across as tired or needing other people because they are the people that others look up to. For me, like my sister was, and it still is, I think she still is kind of one of the most strongest people I know. But to what extent is she that versus is that a role that she had to play and a mask that she had to put on because she didn't have a choice?
Yeah, and there's a lot that as the elder you do feel that you almost feel like yeah, this is just how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so so that's from one point of view. And then there's the very, very extreme point of view where we have not a sibling who's 11 years older than you, but a sibling who may even be 3 years older than you, who is taking care of you and another little child. And we see that so much. We love naming things in South Africa, child-headed households, right? And I want to have a sense from you about the mental health impact that has on the deputy parent if they are, I mean, being 9 or being 7 or even being 12 is outrageously young to have to make parental decisions.
No, and it's an injustice really, and I think we have to create that distinction between parentification and child-headed households. Because on the one hand, you know, parentification is a psychological and emotional process where a child takes on adult responsibilities, whereas a child-headed household is more of a structural and social condition. But there, the adult is not present at all. We've seen this, you know, like the early 2000 HIV and AIDS pandemic. A lot of parents passed away during that time, and then, you know, the eldest child literally became the head of the family. And I think that one is the effects are quite similar, but then in child-headed households is more drastic because the psychological burden and anxiety of that is quite big. You know, like a child is carrying adult-sized stress.
Yes.
You know, we know how it feels like as parents now in this economy, to be concerned about what your children are going to eat and school uniform and stationery and all of that. So when a human being that is at a developmental stage where they actually shouldn't be thinking about that stuff has to experience that, then they easily experience chronic anxiety and just hypervigilance, you know, because safety is a big thing for them. Safety is a big thing for parents. like our biggest priority for our children is to make sure that they're always safe. So now when a child is also thinking about the safety of other children, then they can easily become hypervigilant. Sleep disturbances as well, difficulty concentrating in school. And they also become quite emotionally numb as well, because they have to suppress their own emotions to be able to be emotionally available for other people. So then they don't know how to navigate their own internal world. And when sometimes they become adults that struggle with mental health in silence, because they were taught that their internal world doesn't matter. So they have to kind of figure it out by themselves, but they never learn that vocabulary or never receive the support that they need to be able to label certain emotions and therefore be able to navigate them.
I'm so glad that you're bringing up the fact that, yes, these are very, very different things, but that impact on you suppressing your emotions, you suppressing your own needs. You don't even know what you really wanted or could have done in this world, because it was all on your shoulders to make these other little people thrive. And I can imagine the then challenge between siblings. So, if you've worked really, really hard, and we call it black tax, and you've put your young brother through university, and then he drops out, and then he starts smoking nyaope. Like, if you could not kill them with your own hands because of you've done so much for them to get to where they are. And of course, parents may feel the same way. But what is that dynamic then between, the baby sibling and the elder sibling that affects their siblinghood?
I think that there's a lot of resentment that exists in a dynamic like that. You can either have an older sibling that's like, I raised you, or if they don't turn out the way that in society would ideally like them to grow up, then it's feelings of guilt as an older sibling to feel like I couldn't protect you, or I didn't raise you the right way, which is not a responsibility that you're supposed to have in the first place. But just that over responsibility that exists definitely affects the dynamic of the relationship, and sometimes the eldest can't let go of being the boss, and sometimes siblings struggle to respect those boundaries. So it might not even end, Pabi. It might go on for the rest of their lives because it became such a norm. And unless we get to a place where we try to intentionally break that cycle and make efforts to heal those relationships, then that older sibling will continue playing that parent role well into their 30s, 40s, and even 50. So healing means that everyone kind of has to take accountability for their role now, not based on the past, but the present.
We're talking about the psychology of deputy parenting. When you are the eldest, sometimes it's not even the eldest, Karabo, but you kind of take on what we've learned from Karabo is a parentification role. So that's the clinical term for what happens to a child who then is expected to function as a parent. And there's the emotional parentification where, you must manage adult emotions, family crises, all the way to the fact that researchers show that children who are subjected to parentification often internalize a sense of chronic guilt and feel the responsibility for everybody around them, their partners, their friends, and continuously for their younger siblings as well. So talk to me about your experience on 0861987000. Writer, mental health and conscious parenting advocate Karabo Mokoena is on the line with us. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how does deputy parenting as a concept differ from simply teaching a child responsibility?
And I think that's the general confusion that happens that makes it feel like deputy parenting is normal. For example, asking a 10-year-old to pack lunch is a responsibility. but asking them to take care of their siblings daily while also managing school and dishes and the emotional needs of their parents or their siblings is deputy parenting. I think we always have to kind of have an understanding of what age-appropriate responsibility or age-appropriate chores would look like, because it is important. I mean, you can start teaching your toddlers what responsibility looks like. You know, your toddler can help you, pack up their toys or take, laundry into the basket. Preschoolers can also start to learn, and they even start copying adults. They can help you set the table or water the plants or put away cutlery. Early primary school kids also, they can now make their own beds or sweep small areas. But like even tweens, but you can't expect your either 9 to 12 tweens are between the ages of 9 to 12, right? You can't now expect them to clean the house or take care of their younger siblings day in and out, because they can supervise younger siblings briefly, but not for extended time. Because, like, I know at 12 years old, I didn't want to be sitting in the house and watching other people's children the whole day. Like, I would still want to go out and play.
Be your children yourself, because you are.
Right? Yeah. But, like, I think what we essentially have to understand is that if the activity or the responsibility that you're giving me is stripping me away from what I want to do essentially as a child, you're kind of stealing my childhood away from me. 100%. Like, I want to be out there and kind of being in relationship with other kids. I want to play. I want to have fun, man. And there's nothing fun about parenting, really. It's an exhausting task, even for us as the parents. We'd like to take an occasional break from it. But when now a child is put in a place where day in and day out, they have, to take accountability of other human beings, which is not their job, then that's where the challenge is. Your child can help you boss a younger sibling now and again, but it shouldn't be in replacement of the parent. When now they are taking on responsibilities as a substitute parent, then that's where we kind of cross the line.
Stembisa, I want to come to you, but with a little bit of a warning that we're about to go to the headlines. So if you don't mind starting your story now and then continuing after the headlines, we'd love to do that. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good afternoon, Pabi, and to your guest. Interesting topics indeed. I think today, the question I have for your guest is how can we help? Like, how do you intervene if, like, a close friend, has, like, issues and trauma that is coming from parenting? So the story is, my friend, female, ended up parenting her 3 siblings. Not because the parents had died, but the parents were troubled, if I can put it that way.
Understood.
So she parented them and parented herself as well. Like, when she tells the story, like, you don't even understand as to how did she manage to finish school. Now, well, the siblings became adults. 2 of the siblings have died. One became an alcoholic, and one, she says, disappeared for 4 years, and came back when she was really ill and passed on. And the 3rd sibling is a drug addict.
Is a what?
A drug addict.
Oh, yes, okay. All right.
Yeah, you call it Nyau Benjo, you call it Wunga here.
Okay.
And she's really troubled, carries a lot of guilt, and the question is, like, how do you help, as a friend? Because clearly we're all adults. Even the youngest one is an adult, but she continues to, parent the one that is surviving, carrying a lot of trauma for the 2 that have died. But, they were old and she is an adult, but it looks like she's still a parent.
Of course.
And she doesn't have a child of her own.
So many aspects you're bringing up. Stembisa, hang on the line with us. Karabo, if you can hang on the line with us and let that marinate, and then we continue with our conversation of the psychology of being the deputy parent.
Get in touch with Pabi on X at Pabi Moloi.
It's a psychology of segment here on Power Lunch on Power 98.7. Writer, mental health and conscious parenting advocate Karabo Mokoena is on the line with us as our expert for this psychology of segment. And we're talking now with friend to the show, Stembiso, who calls in from KZN. But if I can just see your story, Stembiso, you have a friend who was put in the position to be, it seems, not only deputy parent, but kind of taking over the parent role altogether, and many of her siblings have not turned out well. She still carries guilt about that, and there is a remaining sister, I believe, who she has not been able to let go of that deputy parenting, the responsibilities and the things that she does, that then she leaves herself behind. And I did think it was quite interesting that you mentioned that she doesn't herself have any children. Does that kind of cover the story?
Yes, yeah, that covers the story. So 3 siblings, 2 passed, and 1 is alive. It's a he, and he's a drug addict. He lives on the street.
So what do you think is going on here, Karabo?
Firstly, shout out to Stembiso for being a good friend.
Absolutely.
And trying to see how she can help hers. So I think the first thing, and healing is possible in the state, right? I think the first thing is by helping your friend start to name what happened. I think that's the first place. Like, she has to just say that I was parentified, because naming it is a powerful and a healing thing, because it turns a confusing and heavy childhood experience into something that finally makes sense. You know, if you could even go Google what the effects of being a parentified adult looks like, then she'll also be able to kind of identify and be able to, relate, and feel normal, because then the guilt that she is carrying now, because her siblings didn't turn out, quote unquote, well. One is suffering from addiction. That's such a huge burden to carry, but that's also such a normal feeling for someone that has went through what she's went through. So I think naming it is very important. I think help her build that vocabulary for herself to say that I'm a parentified adult. I think that's powerful. And then secondly, she really needs to seek therapy, especially for inner child work. This isn't something that she can just kind of figure out by herself. I think she needs a community around her.
Yes.
And that's why I'm saying shout out to you for helping, for being part of that community. But what inner child work is going to help her is be able to help her reconnect with parts of herself that were neglected or silenced, or even forced to grow up too quickly. She'll be able to ask herself, what did I need then and what do I need now? Outside of thinking about her siblings. I think because for such a long time she didn't really consider herself in the equation of her journey. It's always been about other people. For her to be able to navigate these feelings of guilt or shame or whatever she's navigating right now, she really needs to get to a place where she is a priority in the journey, where she is the most important person in the equation.
Yeah.
She has to reclaim those suppressed needs. She has to find ways to heal that guilt and that shame. And I think just always try and reaffirm that, just plant a seed and keep watering it to let her know that you can't claim failure for a job that wasn't yours in the first place. I think that's the journey that she needs to
huge.
travel. Exactly. She needs to undo these harmful beliefs that she has about herself, her value, her worth, and this job, this job that was given to her that she had to claim because no one else could. So there's a lot of work that she has to do, and it's not work that she has to do by herself. It's a journey that she can work with someone, but it's beautiful to just recognize that it really is possible for her to heal from this.
Stembiso?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I like the going back to the inner child that she has and not taking responsibility for the work that it's not hers. I really love that. May I request, but that maybe your producer passes my number to to the psychologist, because maybe she can, refer like to good psychologists that can assist her. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea if Karabo permits that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know that there is, but I can't remember what the URL or the thing is where you can find psychologists, therapists, coaches, mental health people who are black female, black male, because often we're more comfortable in those spaces. I'm going to see if I can find that because there you can find people in your area, so you can find people in that very specific area that you need for your friend. If somebody is going through eating disorders, for example, or addiction, for example, they can find that. So I'm going to see if I can find that to help you out. Otherwise, Karabo, yourself and Alex can have a conversation about that. Thank you so much, Tembiso, because I think you do need a community. Everybody is on your shoulders. You need a community. And when people say check on your strong friend, I know it's become like just a thing, but invariably 9, if not 10 out of 10 times, the parentified child, even when they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, is never going to ask for help. They've never been given permission to ask for help, so they never will.
No. No. They don't know what being supported looks like. All they know is being other people's support system. So they need the support.
Let's talk about gender, because there's a whole genre of us who are called the firstborn girl, the firstborn daughter.
Yeah.
And there are many things of us, the firstborn daughters, that make us wonderful, but also make us very challenged in this world.
Yeah.
And then I imagine there's a firstborn son syndrome as well, which I just wouldn't know about because I haven't lived it. So talk to me about the role the gender plays in this deputization of parenting experience.
So I think it's not a cutthroat response, right? So boys would be typically expected to kind of man up in a home where they're expected to kind of do the caregiving. So according to our societal understanding of the role of a boy versus a girl, the boy is the provider, the one that protects. So now a young boy has to find ways to continue providing for the family when the parents aren't able to, and it's a big responsibility to assume. But you would think that a boy wouldn't be expected to do more of the physical caretaking, like the cooking and the cleaning, which is actually not true. Like if for a home with just boys, for example, my husband is the eldest of 3 siblings, and he was parentified, and he was the one that had to figure out what the kids are going to eat, what are they going to have for breakfast, how's everyone getting to school, because school was quite a distance from home, Now they have to worry about transport money, and then when you are a boy and there's no money, now you feel like it's your responsibility to make that money, Panda, Panda, but like, where's a 12-year-old boy gonna hustle money?
Yes, for sure. And that's why we find so many of these young boys vulnerable then to be coerced, to be seduced by the gangsterism that we see in many parts of our country, or any other rings that are doing things that are illegal.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the other spectrum, they could also be encouraged to start businesses. I think that's what happened for my husband. He started becoming a hustler at school. He sold lollipops and tried to generate an income, which was such a big responsibility to carry. But it I think maybe there's positive and negative effects of being parentified. You do learn to be self-sufficient, which is not a bad thing. But when it's chronic, then you don't ask for help. But for guys, you can learn healthy ways to put money together, which can really help develop you into a stellar businessman, which he has become.
That's
but
incredible.
As a child, it was such a big responsibility to carry. And you're right; it's so easy for them to fall into the wrong hands that are promising them to become these men that they are expected to be in the home.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to give out the number, 083-303-7093. Send us your WhatsApp voice note of your experience if you were in a household where you were the deputy parent. And you can give us a call on our studio line as well on 0861987000. I'd love to hear your stories. So, Karabo, on the back of what you've just said, yes, there are the many, many stories that we see of kids getting drawn into the negative to make some money to look after their siblings, if that's indeed what the deputy parenting needs for them, right?
Yeah.
And on the other side, you've kind of alluded to more positive outcomes, which I do agree with you. There is a sense of resilience that can be built, their leadership skills, maybe even entrepreneurial skills, etc., and so forth.
Yeah.
But in the middle there, man, or all over, there's still psychological harm. You know, you can be the most successful business person, but because of what happened in your childhood, there'll be a symptom that's there, right? Like you can't, I don't know, keep your wife, or you burst out into anger all the time, or you are a massive drinker, or even you run like 27,000 marathons in one day because that's the only way you can feel like you can get out of your own head. Whatever the symptom is, I'm just wondering about, is there ever really a positive here, or is this all going to lead to some sort of psychological imbalance and harm?
Look, there can be positive traits, you know, like you said, leadership or independence, but only if those traits come with emotional support and balance. And unfortunately, when a child is being parentified or in a child-headed home, there isn't emotional support and balance.
Yeah.
So more likely than not, then the outcomes are going to be quite negative. I mean, resilience formed in survival mode really does come at a huge cost.
Yeah.
You know, so those adults are so much more likely to experience chronic anxiety, burnout, low self-esteem, and even just dissociation.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes in adulthood, those adults might become overachievers or emotional caretakers in every relationship that they have. They are so used to a culture of self-sacrifice that they don't know what a relationship without that looks like. So not only does it affect them, but it also affects the relationships that they develop with other adults or even just children as well. So it is in most cases quite negative, Pabi, because the base of this is just that emotional base. They don't have that. They don't know what it looks like to, you know, be aware of how you are feeling and be able to be carried in that. You know, there's nobody to help you navigate your internal world. And when that doesn't happen in your childhood, then you become an adult that has no idea what your internal landscape looks like. And when you don't know what your internal world looks like, then you are more likely than not going to really struggle mentally.
Do you think a lot of us are just walking around feeling that?
Yes, because we are in a mental health crisis. To be honest, our rates of anxiety, both men and women. And when you just look at our historical context, it makes so much sense, Pabi. I was saying now on Freedom Day how I love just watching my children's freedom when they're around me. You know, they run around the house and they scream and they go crazy, you know, because they feel safe, right? So freedom is only possible when you feel safe. And it's really not freedom to do whatever they want. It's freedom to be able to be themselves.
That's it.
But now when you talk about freedom in our context, particularly as Black South Africans, it's such a new concept. Our parents had no time, no capacity, no skills or knowledge or insights to be able to help themselves figure out what they're feeling internally, because they were not safe, not only internally but externally as well. The external world was one of just segregation and physical and emotional abuse, that when they came home, their priority was not to help us figure out how we're feeling, helping us label our emotions and figuring out our internal world.
Because they were in survival mode, right?
Exactly. They were in survival mode. That was their priority. So now we are the generation that's kind of figuring this out. We've got access to the information that they didn't have access to. So this is the work that we are now trying to do, but only when there is acknowledgement of that. I think that's the narrative that I just try and keep driving with the parents that I converse with on a daily, to be like, you just have to acknowledge that our parents went through a lot, their parents before them went through a lot, because we've got years of colonialism and then apartheid. So we come from a lot of pain, and it's okay to just acknowledge that, to just say, you know what, I am in pain, so I'm actually going to do the work to help myself heal so that I can help my children heal as well, to just break those cycles. We've got so many cycles that we need to break, but only when we acknowledge. Because when we don't acknowledge, then we just remain in pain, and then we just medicate.
Absolutely.
We drink it away, we smoke it away, we pop pills, So we are in pain, Pabi, and we can heal from that, particularly as Black South Africans.
Here's Brenda, who's on the line. Hi, Brenda. Brenda?
Hi, Pabi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I just want to share my experience with being a deputy parent. I'm a firstborn at home, and it's something that when I started, even when I was still in university, I would, when schools closes, I will use whatever the little that I got from home to buy things for my younger siblings. After that, I got an internship. Christmas time, I will just take my siblings. I will be getting like 4.5 or so. Christmas time, I take my siblings and then I buy them. So I think when you do that as the firstborn, you kind of, I don't know if I would say it's true, for the lack of a better word, damage your younger siblings, because they get so relaxed and start being so dependent on you that with every little thing, they will think, no, my sister is there. I have a younger brother. The younger brother has been to 3 different universities. None of these 3 universities he came back with the qualification. He's there, he's just partying with friends, and then at the end of the year, no, he's breached the course. He feels no, he needs to change the course, and then he has already applied from a different university, and then now he has breached the contract with the rest at whatever. You have to pay over 30 whatever thousands, because you are looking at your parents. You feel for your parents. You're like, okay, my parents cannot afford, and it's not like for some of us, our parents are not even asking us that you have to be the deputy parent. Just look at the situation at home, and you're like, yes, you look at the situation at home, you're like, shame, my parents, I know if they could afford, they were going to do it. And now I have my own children, I have my own family, but you still have these people who just don't want to grow, because Ceci worked so hard that she is where she is today, and she's able to provide for us. So there's no need for us to do anything.
So in a way, the damage on Ceci, because of what Ceci's had to do, is also damaging the younger ones, because we're tying their arms. Yes, they relax. They don't get into action. They don't develop a dream for themselves. They don't learn how to work hard, because Ceci's always going to catch them.
Yes, because when I look from my side and from my husband's side. It's the same. With my siblings, it's the same. With my husband's siblings, it's the same. All of them, every day, when they can't even, they don't even check on you. The only time you say a hi on WhatsApp or a call from them, you know it's because they're in trouble, they need money for something. That's
horrible. Oh, that's horrible.
Yeah. So this deputy parenting, and we still do it anyway. We still do it because naturally so they are our siblings. We love them. We don't want to see them suffer. So you will keep doing these things up until I don't know when.
Oh, Brenda, I feel you. I feel you. I feel you in every single way. And I'm so sorry. The reason why I kept saying that's horrible is because then who checks on you? Who loves you? Who gives you the space? You know what I mean? If you know that every time someone says hello, they're going to ask for 2,000. So, yeah, that's really a difficult thing. Let's listen to this voice note before we run out of time. Karabo?
Hi, Bobby. Timber here. How are you?
Good on you.
Nice show. Look, in my case, I'm not the firstborn. The firstborn is a guy, but they do fight with my father like nobody's business. They are like siblings. They don't see each other eye to eye. I have to step in to play the role of a firstborn. And it came to create also friction between me and him, because ene o nagana gore ke mo tseela bo firstborn wa hae, and yet ha dire silo, he doesn't do his part. So now me, number 3, I'm carrying the whole burden of the family. So it's not necessarily all the firstborns are responsible. Some firstborns are as dramatic as lastborns.
I agree with him wholeheartedly. Because I know a family structure where I think it was the third born who rose up and became the most mature and the most kind of the person with vision for the family, for the homestead, for this and that. So that did happen, and it does happen. It just is that kid who gets it somehow more than the others. But what I also find interesting, Karabo, and you will have a full session to answer to what Temba had to say. But what I find really very fascinating and entitled is that the firstborn wants to always be that, regardless of the fact that they don't do firstborn duties. How can someone take away your firstbornness? You were born first, you know?
But yeah, exactly. Because what are the duties anyway? Like, who created a list of the firstborn duties? You know, what are the expectations of what a firstborn is supposed to be? And that's why I think the concept of parentification just encompasses that idea so beautifully. In comparison to the other one, anyone can be parentified. You know, he's now having to be the emotional referee between his father and the firstborn, and that's exactly it. You know, it's not only about the physical responsibility or the physical caretaking, but it's also just the emotional stuff, because now he's carrying a burden that's not supposed to be his in the first place. You know, his dad and his brother aren't supposed to be fighting like that. I don't know what the dynamic of their relationship is, but now it's also creating so much resentment between him and someone who feels like he's taking his role, which he actually can't, because they weren't born at the same time. So it's a complex, quite detrimental element that can destroy relationships, really, Pabi. Hey?
But here's the thing. There are things that as a family we'll get together. And I know me and my siblings will get together and we know that mom needs X, Y, Z, okay? Or papa o tlhokofetse re batla lejwe. So we'll all get together and we'll do that, right? If you are the third born and you're going, it's been 2 years, guys, what's happening? I'm telling you guys, I saw this special. Let's do it. Let's gather together and do it. Even if you don't have the money now, it's fine. I'll cover for you, but let's do it so that hofele. And then the festiboni will say, no, that's my duty. I'm supposed to make that decision. Even though they don't move forward, they have no input, they won't pay for it. They just want to be like large and in charge.
No, I definitely hear you. Yeah, no, I hear you.
Let's speak to Silo, you can see I've had an issue with this in my life. I'm not yet healed, but God will heal me. Silo, hello.
Hi, Babi. I hope that God will heal me as well.
Go for it.
And partly I feel like I should trade this firstborn thing. Let me tell you why. I generally hear about, because it comes with also the baggage. I don't want to say baggage, but the responsibility of, the black tax. So you end up as firstborn. You end up, like in my case, there's 3 of us at home. You end up focusing on other people, and by the time you focus on yourself, you're older, and you feel like you've lost so much time. And hence I'm saying, I hope at times, this will heal. God will heal me, because you end up even having so many questions, and it's why me, but obviously why not you, but it does not help when you have siblings that are not necessarily as driven as you.
Yeah, that's tough.
You look at where you come from.
Yeah.
And you're trying to push so that you can change that. The next generation does not necessarily have to go through what you've gone through, but you find that they are in a very relaxed mode, and it becomes too much on you as a person. So I think most of the firstborns can relate to such things. Thank you so much, Pabi.
Thank you, Sello. Thank you. And we will be healed, I believe it. Karabo, if you can wait just a couple of minutes, and we'll wrap up our conversation after our 2:00 Power News. We're talking about it in our Psychology Of segment here on Power Lunch on Power 98.7, and so many people sharing their stories of how it has affected their lives, being the parentified child, the deputy parent, meaning you're the one who takes care of some of the family dynamics. Maybe you mediate in them. Maybe you yourself are needing to, with your qualification and if first incomes, like we heard with our caller a little bit earlier on, you're the one who gives your siblings, those amazing experiences or holidays. And sometimes you find, as Silo, our last caller before the headlines, Karabo was saying, that you find that you don't have a sibling who's as ambitious as you are. And so part of our expectation is that you go, you see how hard I've worked? You've seen how many fire burning hoops I've had to climb through. You're going to need to do the same. Let's go together. I don't mind holding your hand, but you've got to work. And they just are lackadaisical. And sometimes he says, you can even lose yourself as that deputy parent trying so hard to drag your sibling along.
No, it's a powerful conversation, man. I think just parentification is just one of those things we don't always have a language for, and it can show up differently, like we've been able to discover in this conversation, especially in Black families and communities where survival often comes before emotional wellness. It can be quite burdening. It can be quite burdening, but naming it matters. So this is a wonderful conversation, because once we see it, we can kind of stop romanticizing resilience and start asking, at what cost? What is it costing you, even as a third-born, to feel like you have to be dragging people with you? Where does that come from? What happened to you that's contributing in you showing up the way you're showing up? Are you a priority in your journey, or have you been conditioned to believe that other people's needs and other people's lives are more important than yours?
Look how I've parentified myself in this conversation, because I don't think I've necessarily, apart from the one aspect where we talked about our parents coming from like the 76 generation, right? And what they had to go through. But can we talk about parents? Why do parents sometimes fail to recognize the burden that they're putting on their eldest children? And we're talking about more modern parents, right? So maybe Gen X, maybe or late Gen X, maybe millennials. How does that slip by?
Because, if you're also parenting from survival and not reflection, you can easily fall in that cycle as well. So you're probably also just repeating the same cycle where you were probably a deputy parent as well. You're carrying guilt, trauma, and just cultural expectations that are clouding your awareness. So if you're not raising your children from a place of consciousness or just awareness, then you can be easily caught in the trap of repeating cycles that did absolutely nothing good for you. But because you don't have the vocabulary to name that or understand that, then you're just parenting in autopilot. You're still in survival mode, repeating those very same cycles. So it just needs to start with empathy, understanding that our parents did the best that they knew how, and we just have to recognize how their parenting affected us. So what do we now have to do as this generation of parents? What do we have to do to heal ourselves and not perpetuate those same cycles with our children?
Yeah. All right. Let's leave it there. How do we find you, Karabo? Or maybe book time with you, or find any of the work that you do?
So I'm found Black Mom Chronicles is the name of the platform that I use for my advocacy work. So if you could just Google that, Black Mom Chronicles, you're going to find Karabo Mokoena on Facebook, Instagram, and a lot of my work is on my website as well, where I just share stories. Essentially, we learn so much through storytelling, and I do that quite a lot on my website. And my email address is mom@blackmomchronicles.com. And I'm always willing to converse and chat and share my experience as well on the journey. So that's mom@blackmomchronicles.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you once again for being a part of our program this afternoon, and we'll speak to you very soon.
Thank you so much, Pabi.
And that was our Psychology of segment here on Power Lunch on Power 98.7 with writer, mental health and conscious parenting advocate, Karabo Mokoena. If you have the capacity, the capability, the medical aid, the right people to talk to, if you found that in your family you have been that child most parentified, and we've established now that it doesn't only happen to firstborn children, it can happen to the children all across the board. I really urge you to find someone who you can talk to about this. Note that I'm not necessarily saying therapy, because people get freaked out by that, but maybe find a coach, maybe find somebody who works in your church. Find somebody, because I'm telling you, if you are overly responsible when you are a young person, it becomes very, very difficult to be vulnerable, to be in relationships, to take care of yourself. So and your value comes from how much you care for others, when actually you have innate value. You have value just because you are. And many who are parentified forget that. And then to the parents who are doing the parentifying, if you're hearing this and you're thinking, wow, that sounds a lot like what's happening in my home, stop today. Make small incremental stops today to hug all your kids, eldest, youngest, middlest, stinkiest, whatever. Love all your kids. Give them an opportunity to connect with you on that one-on-one basis, to give them the understanding of the value that they have. Because without mom's love and dad's love, you kind of go out there in the world and you're just a vulnerable person. So, that's how we wrap up our Psychology of segment here on Power Lunch on Power 98.7.